Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the globe joining us today. My name is Tom Wentworth. I run product marketing here at Acquia. Today's webinar is an Ask Me Anything with the one and only Dries from Acquia. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Submit your questions for Dries in the Q&A tab in our webinar. We've already got a bunch of great questions and we'd love to see more. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can over the next hour. If you have any audio issues, just drop us a note in the Q&A tab and we'll do our best to help you figure them out. The recording of today's Ask Me Anything webinar with Dries, we posted to acquia.com and also sent to you via email within the next few days. And with that, Dries, let's go ahead and jump in.
Awesome.
The first question for you comes from both myself and Nicholas, and we both want to know, how do you pronounce your last name?
Oh, man. Usually people don't, but given that we've been working together for, what,
7 years.
7 years, I'll let you in. So it's pronounced Buytaert. Buytaert, it's a Dutch name. It doesn't mean anything, but that's how it's pronounced.
Makes sense. We finally have the definitive recording that we can crop out and use from now until infinity.
That's right.
So we're going to try to go through this Ask Me Anything session. We've organized questions in a few different buckets. So we'll try to keep some of the questions as best as we can grouped together so we're not bouncing all over the place. But the first question I want to start with comes from Valerie. And Valerie wants to know, what were the main challenges with open source development that you had to overcome?
It's a good question. It's funny because I think they all come down to scaling the project. And what's funny about it is that looking back, a lot of these challenges look so easy, but then looking to the future, the challenges ahead of us always look so difficult. So I can give you one example, and I've told this example in the past, but initially, this is like 2005, so way back when, the Drupal website, Drupal.org or D.O, was running on a shared server, was a friend's server, and he let me use his server. And so by 2005, there was so much traffic to our website that literally the server melted. Like it couldn't keep up with all the traffic. And so the challenge was buying a new server. And we did some back of the envelope calculation and we said, oh, we need $3,000 to buy a server. And I didn't have $3,000. And I literally lost many, many nights of sleep trying to figure out how to get $3,000 to scale our infrastructure. And so that at the time was a huge scalability issue that we faced. And so obviously we fixed that. There's a great story behind that. But the short version of that story is that I replaced every page on Drupal.org with sort of an empty page that said, please give us some money so we can buy a new server. So imagine all the pages being gone, empty page, PayPal button on it, and something really magical happened. Like within 24 hours, people had contributed like $10,000. Wow. And it was really cool. But at the time, that was a big problem. I think looking forward, scaling is still a problem. And actually, I think it's a problem not just for Drupal, but for open source in general. I feel like open source is now really well accepted within the world and with developers. Like, I don't know a single developer that wakes up in the morning and says, what proprietary software will I buy today? Like, open source is everywhere. However, the scalability of open source projects and the feasibility of open source business models continues to be a tough problem. So I just did a very long blog post about this. You can find it on my personal site. It's called Balancing Makers and Takers to Scale and Sustain Open Source, or something along those lines. I posted it a couple of weeks ago. It really summarizes what I think is the biggest problem today in growing, not just Drupal, but open source in general. And, I'm very passionate about it because I really do believe that open source could change the world. I think there's a set of unique problems that open source can only solve. And so I also believe in this, and maybe it's a little bit idealistic, but I believe in a future where maybe every business, every technology company is an open source company, right? Today, it's like, 1% of all the technology companies, or less than 1%. But how do we make every business an open source business? And to get to these big goals, we need to make it a lot easier to sustain, but also scale open source projects. And that remains a big focus for me to this day, and has been the last 18 years of Drupal and the last 12 to 13 years of Acquia.
Great. So as a reminder, if you have additional questions to ask, you can ask them in the Q&A tab in the webinar. Dries hasn't seen any of these questions, so we are getting authentic, real-time responses.
That's why I'm rambling so much.
So please, this isn't Ask Me Anything, so feel free to ask some challenging questions.
Please do.
Here's a great challenging question that I can't wait to hear the answer to. This comes from Andrew. And Andrew says, as we move towards the release of Drupal 8.8 and beyond, what are the 3 things that you would argue make Drupal a better platform than WordPress?
Well, first of all, I think Drupal is already a better platform than WordPress. I really do.
Yeah.
But I think for me, like, how do we make Drupal even better? I'll interpret the question that way, if that's okay.
Sure.
For me, a lot of it comes down to the learnability and usability of Drupal. I think an area where WordPress is better than Drupal, admittedly better, is it's a lot easier to get started with WordPress, right? The learning curve of WordPress is a lot less steep than Drupal's, and that's really important, and that's a key, it's probably one of the most critical things for us to work on. And so anything we can do to make Drupal easier to use will help drive the success of the project. And so it's why we have been investing in this actually for the past years. And we will continue to make usability and learnability improvements, in my mind, for the next decade. Like, it's something that's never done. And so what we've done in the past, or recent past, is a better demo experience with Umami. Yeah. I think you've seen Umami in action. We have made it a lot easier to install Drupal. We're driving a lot of progress, and Acquia specifically is helping to drive the layout builder, which brings like a lot more WYSIWYG style capabilities to page building and website building. Acquia is driving a lot of progress around the media initiative, and sort of making it a lot easier to manage images and videos, and having that all integrated with our WYSIWYG editing. And so usability, and it is an area where we're focused on quite a bit.
So that leads to another related question that comes from Casey.
Okay.
And Casey says, as more and more drag and drop site builders come online, I assume she means tools like Squarespace and Wix and others, will Drupal become a niche CMS, or will we implement more no-code, low-code features?
Yeah, we will implement more no-code, low-code features. Something that I feel very strongly about. So it's interesting. There's a great quote from Jeff Bezos, and he's often asked, like, what's the future like, and what should we do to build towards the future? And he once answered that question in a great way, I thought, which was basically saying that's the wrong question. He said the right question is to ask yourself, what do we know will not change in the next decade? Because then when you invest in what will not change, you're guaranteed that investment makes, a lot of sense. And so in the case of Amazon, that is things like free shipping or faster shipping. But in the case of Drupal, in my mind, that is ease of use, speed by which you can build, pages, create content, these kinds of things. And also total cost of ownership. Like, these are things that are true today. People, organizations, they want to do more with less. They want to go faster. They want to do less coding and more drag and dropping, right? And it's true today, and it's going to be true 10 years from now, and probably going to be true 20 years from now too. Yeah. And so investing in more no-code, low-code solutions is like one of the best things we can do. And we have to, because obviously others are investing heavily. And that's why I'm so excited about Layout Builder and the media initiative and, you know, some of the other things that we're doing in Drupal. And once we're done with media, once we're done with Layout Builder, we should really think about what are the next things that we can make easier to use, so that people can, move faster building their websites.
Another related question. This is a nice little set of segues. This just came in from Brian, and Bijou also asked the same question. So I'll take Brian's, but it's sort of the same. Brian says, we're going all in on Layout Builder for a large D8 multi-site distribution we're developing. Given that Acquia has funded a lot of the development for Layout Builder, what are the future plans for Layout Builder given the acquisition of Cohesion? Yeah,
it's a great question because there is some overlapping functionality. Yeah. So if you don't know Cohesion, Cohesion is, it's sort of a theme builder, page builder, authoring tool for Drupal. Plugs into your Drupal site and makes it easier to do all of these things that I just mentioned. But it also kind of ships with a Layout Builder today, right? And so I think the question is, how do we reconcile that maybe?
Yeah.
First of all, Acquia has been driving a lot of the development of Layout Builder for the last couple of years, and we will continue to do so. So the roadmap for Layout Builder is a couple of things. One, today, Layout Builder today is really focused on, on entities or sort of, if you had a page with an article, Layout Builder today allows you to lay out the article, but maybe not the header, the footer, the sidebars. And so one of the major things that we're working on is making the Layout Builder like full page. So you can literally edit or lay out every element of the page, not just the elements of an article. And secondly, we're really investing in making Layout Builder easier to use, right? I mean, it's a powerful tool, more powerful than Layout Builders in competing products, but it's still not as easy to use as it should be. And so we're investing in that, and we'll continue to invest in that for the foreseeable future because we're not done. So that's, I guess, the answer to part one of the question. And so to answer the piece, or like, what are we doing with sort of Cohesion's Layout Builder, which is called Layout Canvas. So today, Layout Canvas has features that are not available in Layout Builder. So it's, more powerful in a way. And so our strategy is going to be to keep investing in Layout Builder and then replace Layout Canvas with Layout Builder once the open source Layout Builder is sort of feature complete, or even better than feature complete, with Layout Canvas. And that makes sense for us because Cohesion does all these other things on top of layout building that's still very valuable for customers.
So Kristen, on the last of the topic of usability, I think, Kristen asks, how much priority is Acquia placing to drive the UX experience beyond just good enough? Drag and drop, imagery sizing, centering, placement, these are all end user expectations that haven't been realized yet. Yeah. The D8 usability is lived up to other CMS counterparts and remains promised. So if the content creator is not enabled to master the Acquia platform, the game is lost. So just thoughts on you already sort of addressed it, but just
a little bit. I mean, first of all, I think Kristen is sort of saying, well, we're focused on table stake features in a way, and like people expect today, it's 2019. People expect some sort of layout builder. People expect media management to be part of the core capabilities of a CMS. And Drupal has had those as contributed modules, but they've never been part of the base install, or what we call Drupal core. And so we're moving them into Drupal core. And as we move them into Drupal core, we make them not only better and more deeply integrated with every aspect of Drupal, but we're also trying to upgrade the user experience. So On top of that, the things that I just mentioned, sort of in the context of no code, low code, we're also working on a new admin theme, Claro, which will modernize the administrative experience. We're doing other things as well. And so, I think we have to play catch up first, for lack of a better term. And I think we have been very focused on that. And I think we've made a lot of progress on that. And I think we'll be done with that, 6 months from now. But then the question really becomes so now how do we leapfrog, right? And there is so many unique capabilities in Drupal that other CMSs don't have. I think of Drupal's content modeling tools as being superior to most others, but we haven't made that really easy to use. So I can picture this world where we have an amazing user experience to create content models and relationships between content types and all of these things that wouldn't be available in other content management systems. So I'm sort of excited about wrapping up some of the table stakes capabilities, for lack of a better term, and then to shift gears towards, more differentiated capabilities that we have today and making those really easy to use. And I think that's where we'll start to see the difference. And content modeling, in a way, is a perfect example. I talk to people every week that tell me oh, I fell in love with Drupal because of its content modeling capabilities, But again, the learning curve is steep. And so making that kind of capability accessible or more accessible to a wider audience by making it really easy to use, I think will pay dividends for Drupal.
All right, so moving off of usability, we've got a couple of questions just came in around from Nevin. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And also a question online around migration. So I'll read the question verbatim. Do you think there could have been more done to have customers leverage their investment in D7 when migrating to 8 and 9? From what I understand, it's essentially a rebuild. Are you concerned about losing market share since it opens up customers to consider other platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question. Trying to think about how to best answer it. Looking back, yes, I think we could have done things better to make the migration less difficult or less costly. And so we actually did that. We did look back, 4 or 5 years ago. And we said, well, we have to do it better. We have to do it differently. We're now at a point and a scale as a project where we can break or have a costly migration process. And so everything you see in Drupal 8 and the way we do releases, the way we build the software, the way we are building Drupal 9 is to avoid all of that. So we've took a tremendous amount of learnings from the Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 cycle into the Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 cycle. And we've basically said, we don't ever want to do this again. We want to make every future upgrade easy, super easy, to the point that we sort of planted the flag to try and get to automated updates, right? Which would be the ultimate easy upgrades. We're not there yet, but we're working towards that. And so once you get onto Drupal 8, future upgrades will be easy. I think that's really important for people to internalize. At the same time, we're still continuing to make improvements to the Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 upgrade to make it easier and easier. So I'm not sure if that answers Nevin's question, but.
Yeah, he just asked a follow-up question. I think you answered it. Assuming no edge cases, pretty standard set of modules, what should we tell our clients about the level of effort from D8 to D9 and beyond? I think you said it's easy.
Yeah, the goal is it's easy. And so the way we're making this easy, maybe it's useful to talk a little bit about that, but we're basically, as we add new things or change things, I should say, in Drupal, we are making sure that there is backward compatibility and that we don't break existing modules. And so when it comes time to release Drupal 9, which is next summer, in June of next year, what we'll do is we'll drop these backward compatibility layers But what it means is that module developers, module owners or maintainers, they've had, depending on the capability, years to migrate to the new API. And we've made it also easy for them to do so by providing some automation around it, good documentation around it. So, if you have a Drupal 8 website that doesn't use deprecated APIs, the upgrade will be, should be seamless. It should be very easy. So the trick is to check how much of your APIs are deprecated. And we have some tooling around it to assess it as we go. And we scan like all of the contributed modules, for example. And the answer is there's actually not a whole lot of use of deprecated APIs. And where we have deprecated APIs in use, most of them are simple, meaning most of them are fixed by doing a search and replace. Not always. There's definitely cases where a little bit more refactoring is needed. But most of the time, it's fairly straightforward. And so the call to action now in the community is for module maintainers to start upgrading their modules to use non-deprecated APIs, because then when you have a Drupal site, a Drupal 8.9 website, and it's not using any deprecated APIs, we can actually upgrade you to Drupal 9 very, very easily. So anyway, kind of rambling, but we've learned a lot of lessons, Nevin. We've made it a lot easier to do these upgrades, and we'll continue to make it easier and easier to do upgrades in the future.
Nevin, you want to confirm we're saying your name correctly? I'd feel awkward at this point if we weren't. Last on this topic, a question just came in from anonymous attendee.
All right.
What things are in place today to help migrate from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 that you just alluded to?
Well, first, so we have the migrate API in Drupal core, and there's also some contributed modules around that, and they continue to receive improvements and fixes. Like I read every commit message actually, and every week there's a few or several around improving the stability of the migration path provided by the migrate API module. That's mostly content migration.
Yeah.
And so these are some things that are improving.
Another question from anonymous attendee, a popular name for the webinar.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about Acquia's post D7 end of life support?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the way we've done this and the way we will continue to do this is that at some point Drupal 7 will go out of life. And I forgot the exact date, but I think it's November 2021, right? So it's like 2 years away. So it means everybody has 2 years to migrate from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 or Drupal 9. And at that time, it's no longer, Drupal 7 will be no longer supported by the community. However, with the help of the Drupal security team, we have a program that allows, companies to offer extended support, to basically extend that through commercial programs. So an Acquia will be one of the participants in that program. So what that means is that if you're an Acquia customer and you have this feature, then we will support Drupal 7 until at least 2024. So it's like, that's like another 5 years or more, right? At least until then. And so there's really no reason to panic either. Like Drupal 7 is well maintained and will be well maintained for at least 5 years.
There's a good chance there'll be self-driving cars before Drupal 7 is end of life.
That's right.
Fair statement.
Yeah. I think they're already here.
Not ones that I'm getting into.
Right. More self-driving.
All right. So moving off of the upgrade, David's got a sort of broader question. Looking at Drupal as a whole, including the community, what would you say are the biggest challenges facing us?
Well, I feel like I've talked a little bit about that in the beginning. I think open source, again, is well accepted. I think I think the last 2 decades, we've learned how to work together. We have great tools and processes for collaboration in open source. I feel like a lot of these things work well, obviously could be improved, but the biggest thing is still, around the funding. Like, how do we get more paid people to contribute, or basically full-time sponsored people to work on open source? And that's important for so many reasons, all the way from that will help improve diversity to obviously help accelerate the innovation in open source, that will help us compete against proprietary solutions. And so, funding, scalability, these are, I think, the biggest challenges that we face. And from my point of view, one of the most important things for us to work on, like literally one of the most important things to work on, because it really sets us up if we do this right. It hopefully will allow us to sustain Drupal for, decades or maybe 100 years. Like, take a very long-term view. Like, how do you make sure a project like Drupal continues to thrive and get better and innovate and follow, market trends? It's all about making it sustainable, and finding ways to grow the project in a healthy way. And that's a combination of volunteers and paid people, but to me, that's key.
John asks, we're going through these quickly now, huh?
I know, it's good. Yeah.
This is good. We got a lot of time to go and a lot of questions left. John asks, how can we improve the Drupal.org contribution system that's in place now?
Yeah. Well, I think there's many ways to improve it. So first of all, I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with the credit system, but basically, whenever we in every issue or ticket, like we have our own kind of ticketing system or issue system on Drupal.org. Whenever somebody does work on something, very often that's code, you can credit not only the individual that contributed to closing or resolving a ticket, but you can also credit their employer or maybe even their customer. And it's a really cool thing, and in many ways breakthrough. Like Drupal is truly a pioneer here in terms of kind of having that kind of system, having that kind of data. And it's important because it allows us to tie incentives to contribution, and it allows us to study how our project works, like who contributes, how much is volunteer driven, how much is sponsored, who are the sponsors, because now you can do things like, well, how do we get more sponsors, or how do we get existing sponsors to do more? And so you need a level of insight to have those conversations, right? So credit system, I think, has a bunch of benefits, but it's also early. As I mentioned, we're pioneering this, we're doing something really unique and, in my mind, groundbreaking, but there's also a lot of sort of rough edges to this system. We don't, a couple of key examples of where we can do better is we don't recognize all of the contributions in Drupal through this system. So it's not properly distributed in a way. For example, a lot of people spend time organizing events or mentoring people or providing support in Slack. These things today, you don't get credits for. The system would allow you to get credits for it. You could have a ticket that says, hey, here's all the people that contributed to this event. Let's give them some credits. But people aren't doing this across the board. And so there's a lot of great contributions, critical contributions that go unrecognized. So one improvement is to bring it into every aspect, every kinds of contribution. Could be recognized times, that could be automated. For example, we have a lot of people translating Drupal. That's a contribution. That's a really important contribution. You don't get credits for that today. We could actually automate getting credits for that because it's all done through a hosted workflow, translation workflow. So that's one thing. Another thing that comes to mind is, not all contributions are equal. Like you may have like a bug fix that took somebody, 2 minutes to fix. You get a credit for that. But on the other hand, you may have a massive feature, like maybe the layout builder, that somebody helped work on for months, and he or she may get one credit for that. So there's a huge gap between we don't have the tools today to recognize the effort or even the impact of a contribution on the project. So not only do we need to capture contribution more correctly from the types of contributions, but also in terms of like, the effort behind it. So, there's a lot of improvements we can make to the credit system. But I think the good news is that we have a credit system and it's working, and we're using it. And, now we have to make it better and better. And so the Drupal Association is actually thinking about these things quite a bit. They're making improvements to it. So I think we'll see it get better and better over time. And I think we'll also see other open source projects, learn from our system and implement their own.
Awesome. Payush asks, and I don't think you're going to be able to answer this, any sneak peek into your Amsterdam Dries Note big moments or highlight announcements? Tease the audience. This is your chance.
Well, the truth to be told is, I'm a little bit behind on my Dries Note.
Shocking.
Shocking. But I have some ideas. Obviously, I'm going to give an update on 8.8, which is our next Drupal 8 release. It will be released after DrupalCon Amsterdam, but there's a lot of great progress. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I do want to talk about Drupal 9 because Drupal 9 is like a year or less than a year away, ish, right? So we need to all get ready for Drupal 9. And I think there's important information to share and progress to report on. And it's all good, and it is exciting. So these are some of the key topics. I may talk about scalability and sustainability of open source. It's been on my mind quite a bit, and as I mentioned, I do think it's an important topic. So I may bring that into the keynote as well.
Awesome. So let's transition over to a few questions about Acquia.
Okay. Sean
asks, and Sean is using multi-channel, asked both earlier and just asked here. So important question. What will the effects be for Acquia and Drupal related to the Vista news you shared last week?
Yeah, great question. Let's see. Vista is effectively...
Do you want to just recap the news for those who might have heard it?
So we announced last week that Vista made a majority investment in Acquia. So that means a couple of different things, but it basically means that some of the early investors sort of rotate out, after 12 years, and then Vista comes in as a new investor. I think that's great for Drupal and Acquia because it means we can continue to do what we always have done. Mm-hmm. We can continue to invest in the future. And, Vista is very well capitalized, which is good, right? And in many ways, we're fighting against some of the technology giants, the Adobes of the world and the Salesforces of the world. And so being able to accelerate what we do, I think is really exciting and good news for Drupal, right? We'll do more of the same and hopefully, and that will be good. So we're not making any changes to our commitment to Drupal or our commitment to Mautic. And in fact, you'll likely see us increase what we do for Drupal and Mautic. And, we just announced it last week, so we don't have everything figured out yet. about what that is and how it is. But in my early conversations with Vista, they're very eager to keep investing in Drupal and Mautic and even expanding what we do.
So another multi-channel question comes from Kevin, who asked the same question twice. So it's a good way to make sure your question gets addressed.
Maybe Kevin and Sean are the same person.
Kevin and Sean could be the same person. But Kevin asked a good question. Let me pick it from over here, actually. Docker and containerization have taken off like a rocket. Where do you see Drupal and Acquia fitting into this trend?
Yeah, I mean, we do use it a bunch already at Acquia. Some of our products, use it. Even flagship products like Acquia Cloud, we use it in parts of our cloud. And then on top of that, we are investing in, moving more and more to Kubernetes-based architectures. We use a bunch of it today, and we'll use more of it in the future. So, but it really, I mean, a lot of it, I think, is internal to us. It doesn't really matter to our customers, quite honestly, but it helps us get more efficient at managing all the things that we do and, scaling it and relaunching things. So it ultimately, hopefully the way it impacts our customers is their websites keep getting faster. Their infrastructure becomes even more reliable, becomes even more secure. And we're already state-of-the-art, world-class in scalability and security today. But I think this will make it even better. Might you have some news to share with the audience at our Engage conference in New Orleans in a few weeks? So we've been working on all of these things for a while, and I think we'll give maybe a quick preview at Engage in 5 or 6 weeks? So, Kevin, come to Engage. Kevin, come to Engage. Hereby, this is where I'm going to get in trouble, so rein me in. Should I just give Kevin a free Engage ticket if he can make it? Out of your budget, sure. Yes. Actually, that's my budget. It's my budget, so it's our same. Let's give it out of marketing's budget. I will drop you a note, and if you would like to hear about this, I'm taking care of you. So I'll drop you a note after the webinar. Hope to see you in New Orleans. There you go. I've already gotten myself in trouble here once, giving things away. It's all good. All right, Kevin, now you better come. If we're going to invite you, you better show up. All right. Next question comes from Mustafa, who has a question about Mautic and the roadmap for Mautic. And will there be a more tighter link between Drupal and Mautic? Yeah, great question. So yes, I mean, first of all, Mautic and Drupal already work together, right? So they work together today, but obviously we want that integration to be sort of an example integration. Like we want it to be a showcase integration. Yeah. And that requires a little bit more work, but not a whole lot of work. So yes, that integration from a product point of view, technical point of view, will get better and better. In terms of roadmap, we actually increased the Mautic engineering team by, I don't even know, like maybe 50%. So we made a significant investment in accelerating the Mautic roadmap after the acquisition of Mautic. So I think that's pretty exciting. The team is working on a variety of different things. A lot of these things are actually customer driven. We've done a lot of listening to customers and like what would they want, what do they need, and one interesting customer is our own marketing team. Mm-hmm. And so some of the roadmap is actually driven by an internal desire to ditch Marketo and replace our own system with Mautic. Obviously, that would be a huge milestone for us as a company. It's called eating your own dog food. Drinking your own champagne. Drinking your own champagne is a better way maybe to say that. And so literally the day after we acquired Mautic, we set that as a goal. That didn't mean we could start working on it on day one, but obviously we wanted to do that. And so one of the things we've learned, for example, is that our Marketo instance has like 15 or 16 integrations with other systems. And so Mautic didn't have all the integrations out of the box. And so we're implementing some of these migrations, and we'll be making them available to the open source community. Like I think one example is an integration with Cvents, which is a event management platform, let's say.
An Acquia customer?
And an Acquia customer, yeah. So we use them for Acquia Engage. And so we had an integration between Marketo and Cvent. Mautic didn't have a Cvent integration. These are the kinds of things we need to build and make available so we can, drink our own champagne. And so that some of the stuff the team is working on. Another big thing is Maestro, which is a commercial product that is part of the Mautic family. And Maestro is a little bit like Site Factory in the sense that it helps you manage or operate multiple instances of Mautic. So, for example, if you're a car dealership and you may have 100 car dealerships, each of those car dealerships may have its own instance of Mautic to do marketing in their local region, their territory. And so how do you manage 100 Mautics, right?
Yeah.
And so Maestro makes that easy, but also Maestro makes it easy to share best practices. So, a car dealership in one location has like this amazingly effective campaign going. Other dealerships could sort of almost like copy paste that campaign or the configuration of the campaign, not the actual data, and apply it to their region. So these are some very unique features not available in like the Marketos of the world. This kind of instance management, sharing of best practices. So that's been a pretty hot sort of commercial product, and the team is obviously also working on those kinds of things. So, and then we're also working with the community, the Mautic open source community, in sort of evolving, or not evolving, but kind of sort of documenting a governance model. They didn't have the same level of maturity as, let's say, Drupal, and like how do you make decisions, and how do you appoint volunteers in leadership positions, and how do you make decisions, as a project. So a lot of the effort also is kind of working on that, because that will ultimately make the Mautic community, more robust and more scalable as well. So we're doing a lot of things on different fronts.
So we still have time for lots more questions. So feel free to keep asking your questions into our Q&A dashboard. Lots of great ones. Here's one that came in from Edgar. Over the past 2 months, there have been a dramatic increase of service deterioration alerts from Acquia. Are there any big changes happening within the Acquia infrastructure?
Well, we're always doing new, releases that, like we do dozens of releases every week. But the issues we've had actually were due to Amazon, unfortunately. So, that happens. We learn from those, and we make changes to our infrastructures to become more resilient to major AWS outages. So I'm sorry to hear you had issues. Yeah. We will always learn from those and always get better, to make our products more reliable when these things happen.
So there haven't been any big changes happening, more just we continue to learn when outages happen. Inevitably, we learn from them, get a root cause analysis, and try to resolve it.
And we have a great relationship with AWS, for the record. Like we're one of, 15 companies in their advisory board, with great access to their product and engineering team. So they always help us with those root cause analyses, and they also make changes on their end to prevent, issues, not just for us, but, that also benefit others. So we have a great working relationship with AWS on those things.
All right, well, here's a question. Ashworth asks, how is Acquia poised to stave off competitors like Pantheon?
That's a good question. I think in general, what we're focused on is building a great digital experience platform. Like if you think about the problem we want to be solving for our customers, is we want to make them, let's say, digital winners. Like, we want them to be the best version of themselves, in terms of how they interact with their customers in a digital world. And having your websites up and running is an important part of that, but it's not all of it, right? And so our strategy has been to do more than just, website hosting. And that's why we invest in Mautic. It's why we invest in our commerce tools. It's why we invest in web personalization. It's why we do cohesion. Because ultimately we think about our customers and their problems holistically. Like, how do we help them do more with less? How do we help them go faster? How do we help them actually convert customers versus keep a site up and running? And so our strategy has been very different, I would say, than Pantheon's strategy, in that, we're building out a whole platform that a customer can use to become a great digital business. And I personally believe that that's where we're going, or that's where the market is going. It's no longer sufficient to, just think about having a website, right? You have to think about, how do we attract more customers? How do we convert visitors into paying customers? How do we make themers and designers more efficient? How do you make developers more efficient? How do you make content creators more efficient? And so we have a suite of products for all these personas, sort of based on this notion of offering a more complete solution. So that's been our strategy. It's been unwavered, frankly, for many, many years. Like, it's not something new. It's what we've been doing for a long time now. Because ultimately, we want to bring Drupal and Acquia into more organizations, right? And we need to win against Adobe and Sitecore and these kinds of players. That's where it's at, I think.
Right. So you've answered a lot of the sort of our bucketed sets of questions. I've got some random ones for you now.
Yeah.
If you're prepared.
Okay. Yeah.
What technology do you see out there that you wish you created yourself? That comes from Marcio.
Man,
I would have created yourself.
Create myself.
What are you jealous of?
I'm often jealous of really simple tools. Like, for example, I use a note-taking app. It's called Bear. Love it. It's so cool. It's so simple. These are not like groundbreaking technologies by any means, but they're delightful tools that I use every day. And it's like, wow, I wish I could have built this myself. So yeah, I don't know. Not a great answer maybe, but
I take that as nothing. You're like,
I don't know about that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by the whole blockchain thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's so many crappy things about blockchain, first of all, but let me be very clear, like the power consumption, it's crazy bad. At the same time, I'm also sort of an optimist about where it could go after we fixed some of these big, nasty problems with blockchain. I think about that in maybe a relationship with the makers and the takers stuff, like how do we create more sustainable open source projects? I think the root, and by the way, this is yet to be created, but I think there's some interesting foundations in place. But the root problem is ultimately sort of a coordination problem, I call it. Like, how do you get multiple people to collaborate or fund open source projects? And I do think the blockchain-based technologies may lead to solutions to fix coordination problems, which would benefit open source and Drupal, but actually the world. There's a lot of problems today that are sort of multi-stakeholder problems that can be fixed unless we all work together in a way that we don't naturally work together. And I know this is kind of meta, but there are technologies that need to be invented to allow us to do just that. And open source and maybe blockchain could be part of that. So not yet invented, but that would be big because all of a sudden we could go fix some really big problems. But the funny thing is that today blockchain is sort of maybe the opposite. It's creating problems, not solving problems. But I do think it could evolve to a solution, a technology that will solve problems or solve more problems than it creates.
Isn't blockchain just like a doubly linked list back in the computer science classes? So maybe my dumb brain thinks of it that way.
I think at the core it's that, but then they did add a few other capabilities.
Yes. All right. Speaking of abstract, we've got a question from Vicky. What's your take on Java, and what's the best replacement? First of all, you have a history with Java. People may not know about.
Yeah.
Want to share your history?
I was a Java developer and also did my PhD on Java. So I did, for 5 years or so, I worked on just-in-time compilation, garbage collection, all around the Java virtual machine. It's a runtime for Java. So I do have a history on Java. What was the question?
Would you like, what's your take on Java now? As a PHP guy with a Java background, what's your take on Java?
Well, first of all, I don't think Drupal would have been successful if it was written in Java. Like, the only way we are where we are is because we used an accessible scripting language like PHP, that literally everybody could download, crack open the code, make changes to, and also run cheaply. Back in the day, like, you could run a Drupal site on a shared hosting account. Like, back in the day, Java was difficult, complex, and very expensive to run as well. So I have no regrets whatsoever about using PHP to start Drupal. I think it's a key reason of why we've been successful. Having said that, PHP isn't the answer to every problem. Like, there are problems, that PHP isn't the best solution for, and Java is a better solution for. I mean, I think about long-running applications that take a lot of memory, heavy, compute heavy. Like, I wouldn't use PHP for those. I mean, I would use Java for those. So, each language has its use case, and use the best tool for the job.
Good advice.
Yeah. There's a reason why all of the, commonly used CMSs are not using Java, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're all based on scripting languages, and PHP continues to be the #1 language for the web today. So.
Rob asks, we haven't used Drupal very deeply because we rely on collaborative authoring features like inline change tracking and inline comments in our existing CMS. What kinds of authoring improvements might we see in Drupal in the next couple of years?
Yeah.
Maybe like around things like Google Docs type experiences.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And I think actually there is a few contributed modules that implement this. Frankly, the other thing a lot of people do is they write in Google Docs where they have the collaboration tools, and then they copy paste it into their Drupal site. That's probably, 75% of the world. And it's not a Drupal specific thing. It's like every CMS. So it is interesting to think about, would you bring those capabilities into the CMS, right? And I think you can, and people have done that. And there are some modules in the Drupal world that, give you some of that. But Drupal also has, a very robust workflow tool and system to take editorial changes through a more rigorous process, where you can have sign off from different people, things you can do with Google Docs. I mean, Google Docs is a little bit more loose, but very quick. So it's about trade-offs. So I think it's an interesting idea. I'd love to see more people work on that, because I think it's the right workflow for many. They don't need the rigorous process. So why not?
Excellent. Well, we're approaching the hour here. I want to thank everyone who took some time out to contribute questions. A lot of questions today. We tried to get to as many as we could, but thank you again to everybody who submitted questions both before and during the webinar. Thank you, Dries, for taking some time out today and for explaining to all of us finally how to say your last name properly.
Yeah.
So we will be training and certifying our colleagues on that. As I mentioned in the beginning, we will be sharing the recording of this webinar to acquia.com, and we'll send out an email over the next couple of days with a link to the recording. And if you have any additional questions that didn't get answered today, send them to marketing@theacquiateam.com, and we'll take care of it. Kevin, I owe you an email, so I'll follow up on that as well. And thanks everyone for your time today, and have a great rest of the day no matter where you are.
Thank you. Thanks for moderating.